Here are 3 creepy, first-hand accounts. Enjoy. We only have 2 children. I was driving the girls to soccer practice when I realized something was wrong. They were back there, alternating between chattering happily with each other, bickering, and competing to tell me something while telling the other to be quiet. They were talking now, all normal stuff that, at least on most days, was enjoyable background noise as I focused on driving and whatever else was on my mind at the time. But as we got off the freeway and started down the exit toward the soccer field, a new sound emerged from the back, a voice, high and soft, but unmistakably that of a young boy. "We're going to be late." My eyes snapped immediately to the mirror, and in its reflection I could see the girl sitting on the front row of seats like always, but instead being followed by shadow and a view of receding road out the back glass. My eyes now went to the child staring at me from the second row of seats. I had to fight the urge to slam on the brakes. Instead I slowed down, trying to stay calm as I pulled into the parking lot of the nearest shopping center. Stopping, I turned around slowly, half expecting the boy to be gone, just a temporary phantom of my imagination. Instead, he stared at me with the same confused look that my daughters did. He looked to be 6 or 7, so a couple of years younger than our younger daughter. But I'd never seen him before in my life. June started to ask why we had stopped, but I spoke over her, my voice even but strained in my own ears. "Son, why were you in our car? Did you get lost?" He frowned at me. "What do you mean, Dad? I thought we were going to soccer." I glanced at my daughters, who looked like I'd gone crazy. No, I knew how many children I had. That was absurd. And this this stranger he could be dangerous, young or not. Waving my hand at them in the sliding door next to June, I told them to get out of the car. The boy went to do the same, but I told him no. He was to stay where he was. The girls tried to complain, but I told them to hush and stand out front where I could see them. When they had, I called their mother. "Hey, hon, did you get them at soccer okay?" "On the way still, but something's come up." "Marcia, how many children do we have?" She laughed. "I hope only 3. My blood went cold. 3, swallowing thickly. I looked in the rearview mirror again. The boy was just watching me. His face trembled. "Tell me their names, please." "Kevin, you're scarring me." "What? Just tell me, please." "Okay, June, Allison, and Toby. Now tell me what." My mind was racing as static filled my head. I doubt what is this some kind of joke? Is what a joke? What's going on okay? Are Toby and the girls okay? We don't have a child named Toby. I said it as a hissing whisper, but I felt sure the boy still heard it. I didn't care. I was growing scared and angry, and I wanted whatever this was to stop. There was a brief pause and then, "Where are you? Like right now, where are you at?" I glanced around. The shopping center right off the exit for the field. In front of that bakery we got Allison's cake at last year. Or are the kids all okay and safe? Yes, of course they are, but I don't know what to do with. Just wait there. Okay, keep an eye on them. I'm leaving work now and I can be there in 20 minutes. Do you need to stay on the phone with me? Or are you okay to wait? I frowned. She thought I was crazy, maybe even dangerous. I wanted to feel indignant anger at the idea, but was it so far-fetched? I trusted her, and this was way beyond any kind of practical joke. So what did that leave other than that something was wrong with me? Hand trembling, I rubbed my face. "Sure, yeah, I'm okay. I'll keep all 3 of the children safe until you get here. Don't worry." Marcia was there less than 15 minutes later, and she was clearly terrified. She left her car in the parking lot and drove us to her mother's to drop off the kids. Carolyn seemed concerned, but not about this little boy they kept calling Toby. She swept him up in a hug when the kids ran to the house, toting him inside with the others while asking how their day had been. The pit in my stomach just continued to grow as we pulled out of her driveway and headed toward the doctor. We were halfway there when I forced myself to speak. "So I'm crazy, is that it?" Marcia glanced over and gave me a worried-looking smile. "No, you're not crazy, but I think something's happened. Maybe you hit your head and don't remember, or something is going on inside that's making you confused. I mean shit. You don't remember your own son. Something had to happen, right?" I looked away and nodded. "Yeah, sure, I don't remember anything like that. But sure, it makes sense." We rode on in silence, and when we reached the doctor's office, Marcia got out right away and started heading toward the front door. I was halfway out of my seat when I remembered to get my insurance card out of the glove box. Opening the door to the compartment, I rustled around amid gun and car manuals until I found my health insurance card tucked into a holder with my card for car insurance. I was about to shut the door back when a piece of blue paper wedged against the back of the glove box caught my eye. I glanced up, but Marcia had already stepped inside. I could see her through the glass at the front reception desk, presumably letting them know they had an emergency walk-in. Tugging the blue paper free, my stomach cramped worse than before as I unfolded it. I didn't remember it, but it was my handwriting on the notes. Just one line. "I only have 2 children." Hands shaking, I stuffed the note in my pocket and went inside, trying my best to act pleasant and calm as we waited for them to call us back. Marcia tried to make small talk and act casual, but I could tell she was nervous and scared, and I felt guilty because I knew I was the cause. My mind kept going back to the note in my pocket. But what did it really mean? Was it telling the truth, or just a sign that I'd been having problems with my memory and reality for longer than just that afternoon? When they called us back, the nurse did some initial questions and took my blood pressure and pulse readings before telling us the doctor would be in shortly. Unlike most visits, this time he was actually in there quickly, his face concerned from the start, and only growing more grave as he listened to my account, and then Marcia's. When we were done, he raised his eyebrows and let out a long breath. "Well, I see why you're both worried. It's probably nothing bad, and we'll get it sorted out. But right now it must seem scary." He smiled at me. "What, Kevin? If it helps, I can assure you that you do have 3 children. Hell, Toby's on the same Little League team as my grandson Devin. You don't remember any of that." I shook my head sadly. "I don't. I want to, believe me, but I don't remember anything about him at all." He nodded. "But you remember the rest of your life. You remember your other 2 children, not just who they are, but you remember specific memories of them in your life." "Sure, yeah, I do. And Marcia, you remember she's your wife, and you remember your life with her." "Well, of course I do. Look, he raised his hand. "Just bear with me. Kev, do you remember your job and where you live?" I nodded. "Yeah, we live the next neighborhood over from you and I work from home." "And where did you grow up?" "On a farm with my parents and sister in Nebraska." "Okay, good. So any other gaps that you're aware of? Anything else you don't remember or feel isn't as it should be?" He held my gaze as he went on. "Feels strange or off or whatever?" I shook my head. "No, just Toby, I guess." He nodded. Good. His gaze shifted to Marcia. "I think it's just a trip fault in the beta section of the last inurement cycle." Confused, I looked around at Marcia. "What's he tall?" I didn't have time to scream as she stuck a black squirming thing on my face. It latched on immediately, digging onto my skin as my head filled with static again. Oh God, what were they doing to their house? Are they actually painting it pink? I looked around to see Marcia peering skeptically out the living room window that looked out to the Robertsons' house next door. I laughed as I went back to flipping channels. Who knows? He's half senile. Then you've seen the nightgown she wears when she's out walking the dog. We'll be lucky if they don't add yellow polka dots. She shot me a dark look. "It's not funny. It'll be an eyesore. And when we go to sell this house, it'll hurt the value a ton." I nodded, trying to look more serious. "Yeah, I'm in. You're right. But we can only screw the hedges taller for now. And it'll probably be a long time before we move." It sounds morbid, but the Robertsons will probably be dead by then. And maybe the next neighbor will have better taste. Marcia had been glancing out the window again, but now she turned back to me. "Yours, I thought we'd already decided we needed to move in the next few months." Feeling confused, I turned off the TV and looked back at her, trying to judge if she was joking. "When did we talk about that?" "Several times. This house isn't going to work anymore. You know that." Frowning, I glanced over at the dark stain in the corner of the room. "Because of that, I told you it's not black mold and I can get rid of it." She looked over at where I was pointing and then back to me with an irritated stare. "I don't know what you're talking about. I heard footfalls out in the hallway." And Marcia lowered her voice as she went on. "But no, I'm talking about for them." 2 young girls were running into the room laughing. "Daddy, will you take us to the mall?" I stared at them, paralyzed by the unreality of it all, glancing at Marcia. She didn't seem to think anything strange was going on at all, as she was smiling at the girls and looking at me expectantly when I didn't answer them. Looking back at the children, I forced a smile of my own and nodded. "Sure, hi. Give me just a few minutes and I'll be glad to take you." The bigger one came up and hugged my neck, followed quickly by the younger girl, who shoved the older one out of the way and gave me a kiss on the cheek as she said "thank you, Daddy," and ran back out of the room with the other in tow. Marcia was laughing. "They're getting along today, but they're 9 and 11 now. They're already getting where they snipe at each other more. And by the time they're teenagers, they'll need their own space. Sharing a bedroom at that point won't be good for them or us." Swallowing, I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. Yes, I'm sure you're right. Hi. I guess I'll take them to the mall." My face felt like a mask as I stood up and left the room, and my chest was so tight it was hard to breathe. I think I'd covered it well enough. But how long could I go on like this? How long should I go on like this? Because I didn't want to scare Marcia or those sweet little girls. But I had no idea who they were. As far as I knew, we didn't have any children. I made it through the trip to and from the mall and dinner that night. But by 8 I said I didn't feel well and went to bed early. It wasn't a lie. I was terrified that I'd gone insane or had a stroke or something. But I'd also felt compelled to not tell Marcia about it. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry or frighten her. But I was the one that was frightened. And the idea of her catching on that I didn't remember June and Allison, well, it scared me even worse. She kissed me on the ear when she came to bed a few hours later, and I pretended to be asleep. In truth, I hadn't slept at all, and by the time I knew she was out, I was sliding out of bed and pacing the house. I needed to figure out what was going on or I needed to get help. Maybe walking through the house and looking at everything would break something loose and give me my memory back. So that's what I did. I walked through the downstairs, recalling different memories of times we had there, specific memories of being in the kitchen or the hall or our bedroom. Then I went upstairs where I had my office and where, apparently, the other end of the Jack and Jill bathroom opened into those little girls' bedroom. I had memories from upstairs too, but just like downstairs, just like everywhere, June and Allison weren't in any of them. Not them. Their room being a little girl room. Nothing. Heart pounding in my chest. I trudged back downstairs and went and sat on the living room sofa. What was wrong with me? And when did it start? Casting my gaze around the room, my eyes landed on the damn stain in the corner. How long had the stain been there? At least a month, right? Or was it a year? I didn't know that anymore either. But maybe I was wrong and it was black mold, seeping into my lungs and my brain and making me forget the things I should love and remember most. Grimacing at the thought, I went and got a bottle of bleach and dumped some on a sponge. The smell was sharp in my nostrils, but I didn't care. I wanted this damn thing gone. And maybe if I could fix that, other things would come back into focus. I spent the next hour scrubbing at it. But other than removing some old paint, my work didn't seem to affect the stain at all. Sad and exhausted, I took the bottle of bleach back to the hall closet and stuck it back on its shelf. It was then that I noticed a small patch of blue paper peeking out from around the edge of a bottle of window cleaner, lump in my throat. I pulled it free and opened it up. It was in my own handwriting, though I didn't remember writing it. And it said, "You don't have any children," sucking in a breath. I read it again, my mind spinning out what it all meant, and the floor creaked behind me and I felt something was wrong with our house. At first, it had seemed too good to be true. The neighborhood was nice and quiet. It wasn't far from Marsha's work, and there was room here for me to have a real home office instead of one side of the living room like back when we were living together in that crappy apartment. The mortgage, while not cheap, wasn't bad either, especially not for a house in such good shape. But that was the thing. Last month I noticed a stain in the corner of the living room. At the time I thought it was maybe mildew coming through the paint or a bit of water damage from a leak in the roof the house inspector had missed. But it kept getting worse over time, and it hadn't rained in a couple of weeks. It was almost as big as a man now. A looming shadow in the corner of the room that I hadn't been able to get rid of despite scrubbing it down twice. I wanted it fixed, but we didn't have the money to get someone to look at it yet. And besides, Marsha acted like she didn't notice it. She never explicitly said it wasn't there, but she would just kind of shrug and change the subject when I brought it up, like it wasn't a big deal or she didn't want to talk about it for some reason. So I've been trying to just ignore it for the moment. But it was hard, especially when I began feeling weird. It started with me waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'd sit up in bed and not know where I was or what I was doing there. Hell, I'd been married to Marsha for 3 years and known her for 6, and there were times when I didn't know who she was when I looked over at the sleeping shape next to me. I felt like I was going crazy. When I tried to pass it off as lack of sleep or night terrors, I always came back to myself after I woke up a bit, didn't I? And for the first few days that was true. But this morning I realized I was writing a note to myself on a piece of blue stationery I'd gotten as a gift a few years back from my Aunt Emma. Wait, was I right? What if he blew her? My hand had stopped mid-pin stroke as I got lost in my thoughts. When I came back to what I'd been doing, I read what I'd written so far. Marsha, is it your? Honey, what are you writing over? There in the corner, beside, the real estate agent looked over at where I was pointing dubiously, before sucking in air between her teeth. Maybe it could use a fresh coat of paint. But I don't see any stand over there. She gave me a cautious glance. Kevin, if you have an issue, I can refer you to a handyman. But I need to remind you that I came over as a professional courtesy. I go by my first name. I told you that. Remember, she let out a small, discontented grunt. Sure, sorry, lots of clients. But Scott, you closed on the house 3 weeks ago. And if you have an issue now, you'll have to take it up with the former owner, not our company. I grimaced at her. Look, that's fine, whatever, but I have a little dog named Trixie. A friend of mine was watching him for me while I got moved and settled. But I'm ready to go get him and show him his new house. But if it's all fucked up with mold or something, I don't want him being around it. She gave me a waxy smile. Sure, I understand. Well, I'm sure it'll be fine. Either way, I don't see anything, so I can't really help much more. Pulling out her phone, she made a face. And I'm running late. I'll email you my handyman. Good luck with your pet and all. I heard the front door close as she left. But I was focused on the stain again. How could she not see it? Was she lying? Maybe, but as bad as it was getting, wouldn't I have seen some surprise even if she tried to downplay it? And why try to lie about something so obvious? I reached out and ran my hand along the wall. The wall didn't even feel like wall there. It was spongy, not like it was damp, but more like I was touching the side of some sleeping dragon. Fuck this, I wasn't bringing Trixie into this shit. And I'd either get a professional to clean it or just rip out this whole fucking. Hell, something had slithered out of the slick darkness at the heart of the stain and was crawling up my arm, biting me as it went. I spun away, trying to shake it off, But it wasn't just me that was turning. The room was turning. The whole world was turning. Everything becoming brighter and brighter until I had to close my eyes, and when I opened them we were back home. All 3 of the kids had been quiet on the way back from their grandmother's house. Though I wasn't sure why. Why had we dropped them off there on a soccer day anyway? It didn't matter. I was just tired and glad to be home again. Once inside, Marcia told me to go sit down and relax while she heated us up some leftovers. I wasn't going to complain. I felt sure I'd fall asleep as soon as I sat down on the sofa. But 10 minutes later, I was still idly channel flipping when the corner of the room caught my eye. There had been a stain there. Hadn't there. I couldn't see it in this light. But it was almost like I could still feel it, lurking under the surface of some thin layer of paint or polish. I wanted to go check the spot more closely, but I could wait. I didn't want Marcia to know. It might worry her. After all, a small bell rang close by and I jumped at the sound. Not because it was loud, but because it was unexpected. I heard it again, this time closer, and as I turned to look for the source, a large black cat leapt up onto the arm of the sofa. Was it? I winced as I felt something starting to break loose in my head. Strange ideas, other memories. They were dim figures circling the glowing edges of my conscious mind's circle of light. But I could tell they were getting closer to stepping into view. I needed time to think, and I didn't need to act weird until I knew what was going on. I turned and looked into the kitchen where Marcia was. She hadn't noticed my reaction, and something whispered that I should keep it that way. Reaching out gingerly, I gave the cat a brief, gentle pat on the head. Hey there, big fella. Glancing back into the kitchen, I saw her back was to me. I took the opportunity to slide to the other end of the sofa away from the creature still staring at me with bright green eyes. It had a simple collar, and on its tag, a name. Barties. I heard the kids coming back downstairs, and before I knew it, they were in there climbing on me, asking if I felt better now. I lied and said I did, as I didn't want to worry any of them. Didn't want them to know that I wasn't sure I was married to the woman fixing dinner in the kitchen, or that any of them were my children at all. In fact, the more I laughed and joked and played with them, the more unsure I became that any of this was actually my life. Then the more certain I became of something else. Every night, my girlfriend wakes me up to tell the exact same joke. Before I start, I feel like I should let something very clear. I absolutely love Ellen. We've been living together for about 3 years now, but have known each other our whole lives. In fact, we were childhood friends, and I know this may sound like a fairy tale to some people, but it truly felt like we were always destined to be together, even after graduation. When we started dating other people, it only felt truly right when we were with each other, so I don't know what took me so long to ask her out. But I'm really glad I did. We have the same taste in music, movies, and even food. We laugh at the same dumb jokes, and know exactly how to comfort each other in times of need. She's the kindest, most gentle and loving girl I ever met. We even been talking about our plans for marriage, and how we would like to have kids of our own. That's why I heard so much how it all went terribly wrong in just 4 nights. I would also like to preface that Ellen doesn't have much of a family other than me, and some very distant aunts that she never met, and doesn't even know their names. I was born in a big family, with 4 siblings and plenty of cousins that were always visiting, and even helping out when we got in trouble. Ellen has none of that. She doesn't have any siblings, and her father was an alcoholic, abusive freak that died when she was young. Her mother was a very kind and inspiring person that took care of the family by herself for many years, and almost a second mother to myself. So when she passed away last year, it hurt us both for a long time, but Ellen stayed strong. She's not the type to let her feelings easily surface, so you gotta be a lot more perceptive to get what she truly feels. I used to pride myself in being capable in that. I felt like I knew her better than I knew myself. That's why this is all so strange, and frankly, terrifying. We were sleeping in bed, and I was dreaming. I don't really remember what it was about, but for some reason I'm sure of it, until I heard her voice, very close to my ear. Knock, 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 knock. She was caressing my hair, gently, while sitting in bed and looking below at me. I slowly opened my eyes, groggy from sleep. Hey, what is it? Baby. She kept looking at me, fixated, and repeated, knock, 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 knock. I glanced at the digital clock on top of the dresser, 3:27 a.m. I had worked in only a few hours. What is it? Ellen. She paused. Please answer the joke. There. Knock, 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 knock. Fine, I accepted. Mostly because I was expecting some kind of surprise. Ellen wasn't attacked to do what she was doing for no reason. Was there? Her smile opened up, and she answered, not me, so don't answer the door. I kept looking at her, dumbfounded. What was that supposed to mean? Is that it? Is that the joke? Yes, she said, laying in the couch and covering herself with a blanket. Thank you for answering. Weirdo, I answered, closing my eyes and going back to sleep. Next morning, things went as usual. I only remembered the strange conversation while I was alone in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, and wasn't even sure if it had truly happened or if it was just a weird dream. So we had our breakfast together, and she was acting normal, reading something aloud from a fashion magazine. Frankly, I wasn't paying much attention, so I took the opportunity to ask about last night. Initially, she didn't seem to know what I was talking about. Then her eyes fixated on me and the same smile from last night crossed her face, briefly, and I knew it wasn't just a dream. She told me it wasn't anything of importance, and stopped paying attention when I asked more inquisitively. And even though I shouldn't, I gave up. I had work and other matters to attend to, and just brushed off the weird event thinking it wouldn't happen again. But the following night, I woke up to her voice. Knock, knock, the puns, knock, what is it now? I said, Helen, what are you doing? Knock, 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 she replied. This time, she wasn't even touching me, just sitting in bed, looking at me with that same smile, but her eyes seemed larger, and she blinked in longer intervals. I looked at the clock. Once again, 3:27 a.m. Helen, come on, what is it? I got work in a few hours. Can't have the luxury of waking up in the middle of the night to answer knock-knock jokes. Knock, knock, knock. This is getting creepy. You know, I'm not sure if this is some gag you've been doing, but I don't like it. Answer it. Knock, knock, knock. I sighed, but also let a small laugh escape. It was creepy, of course, but she was also my Ellen, so it didn't bother me as much as it should. Fine, who the fuck is there? I answered in a playful tone. Not me, so don't answer the door. For some reason, I felt a chill down in my spine. It was the same answer as before, and I still didn't get what it meant, but the way she said it, with a strange, monotone voice, contrasted well with her smile, and the fact that I had no idea of what she meant by that. What does that mean? I asked. I really don't get it. She just smiled, and went back to sleep. I felt a throb in my heart, but did the same. Next day, we talked again about what was happening. She was very evasive with my questions, and I barely got her to say anything. It was almost as if she couldn't talk about it, which was very strange, considering we talk about pretty much everything. I told her I needed to be well rested for work, something she should understand well, and wasn't liking her little gag every night. She just nodded, and I decided to not press further, as I didn't want to hurt her feelings and had work to attend to. When I got back home, we had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed. Knock, knock. I opened my eyes faster this time around. In fact, I barely got any sleep. I just knew she would do it again and kept thinking about it the whole time. Glance at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Knock, knock. I thought about ignoring her, just pretending I was asleep and she wouldn't wake me up. So I closed my eyes slowly, hoping that she hadn't seen me opening them in the first place, and stayed quiet. Knock, knock. She continued. She didn't stop. I regulated my breathing, but she kept going. Knock, knock. I'm not answering your fucking joke. Ellen, stop it. Knock, knock. I ignored, but she kept going. She had never been this insistent with anything before. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting on my nerves, and frankly, I felt scared. Why was Ellen doing this? Why every night? At the same exact time down to the minute? Why wouldn't she let me sleep until I answered her? Knock, knock. I got up at a sudden movement. God damn it. Ellen, I was ready for a discussion. But when I finally glanced at her, it was as if the strength was drained from me. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't blinking, just staring right at me, fixated like an animal, and her mouth was moving, slowly, and she didn't stop. Knock, knock. I didn't know how to react, or what expression I had when I saw her, but my heart skipped a beat. It was terrifying, as if her gaze froze me in place. 1,000-yard stare. Knock, knock. Who's there? I asked, feeling as if it was the only way out of that nightmare. Not me, so don't answer the door, she said, weakly. Helen slowly closed her eyes and laid down. I kept staring at her while she fell into what seemed to be a deep sleep. I got up and left. I walked downstairs and sat down at the couch in the living room, staring at the night sky outside and absorbing the quiet of the neighborhood. My heart was beating fast and it didn't slow down. I was too scared to sleep in the same room as my girlfriend, all because of a fucking knock-knock joke. But it was unnatural. I thought about calling someone. I thought about it all being some kind of sleep-related issue, such as some type of sleepwalking, but it didn't make any sense. I felt so tired and decided that early in the morning, I would call an old friend who's a psychologist and get the opinion of a professional. Something was wrong with Ellen. I stayed on the couch as the day rose, and once Ellen woke up, she was acting normal again, even asked me why I wasn't in bed. I didn't answer. In fact, I didn't speak to her and simply left for work. She seemed very upset, but I wouldn't do anything about it. Once I got to work, I called my friend, told him everything that was happening in as much detail as I'm describing now. He didn't seem as worried as I figured, but we agreed on making an appointment for next week. Now I just needed to convince Ellen to come with me. I received plenty of text messages from her. She seemed very worried, sad, and even confused. She apologized a lot, and it broke my heart a little. I felt bad. I shouldn't have, but I answered her and made her promise it wouldn't happen again. I also told her about the appointment, and she seemed reluctant but agreed to go with me, so we made up. This was Ellen, after all, the girl I knew ever since I was 6 years old. the woman I loved and that had taken care of me for years. And as much as that strange behavior creeped me out, she wasn't doing anything particularly frightening or even dangerous. So for a brief while, I convinced myself I should give her another chance. When I returned home from work, we stayed together. She even prepared my favorite meal. Ellen was acting as gentle and caring as I always remembered, and I slept with her in our bedroom, even though I was still a bit reluctant. Milk, I couldn't believe it. She promised me she wouldn't. Milk, I gazed at the clock. 3:27 a.m. Always. Milk, I was laying on my stomach and I couldn't see her face. In fact, I didn't even bother to look at her. I was feeling more sad than scared. At that point, sad that she had broken her word. Knock, who's there? I answered, determined to just go back to sleep. Not me, so don't answer the door. I stayed quiet and closed my eyes. I just hoped I would be able to handle it until the appointment next week. To my surprise, I was actually able to sleep, probably because I hadn't been able to rest since last night. The following morning, I went back to not saying anything to Ellen. Only very limited responses. I was expecting her to act same as yesterday, trying to apologize, but she didn't. Mostly she didn't say anything, almost as if she had accepted it. She also looked tired, or at least a bit weak. I went to work, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Didn't receive any messages either. Once I got back, we had the most silent dinner I ever had in my life, and she barely of anything. I decided to let her have the bedroom and sleep on the couch. I wasn't sure if it would stop her, but held on to the hope that she wouldn't go downstairs only to tell me the same knock-knock joke again. I covered myself with a blanket, shaked off that uneasy feeling, and tried to sleep. I had a deep sleep, without dreams, felt like I was lost in darkness. Then I heard breathing, opened my eyes to see Ellen, standing above me, looking at me with big, fixated eyes and dilated pupils that didn't seem to belong in such a completely neutral expression. Watching me sleep, I almost screamed in terror, jumped out of the couch, and her eyes followed me as I stumbled through the dark room, creating distance between us. For a moment, I was able to glance at the clock above the table. 3:27 a.m. Helen, what are you doing? I asked, desperate, but she didn't move. In fact, she didn't say anything, just stared at me, as if I was made of glass and she could see right through me. Then I heard a knock on the front door. Instinctively, I looked in that direction. It was followed by another knock, and another, someone almost pounding at the door. I glanced back at Ellen, and she was still staring at me, slowly. I got closer to the door and she didn't move. The pounding continued. Who's there? I screamed. It stopped, and then I heard a voice. John, can you hear me? Open the door, please. John, please open the door. I froze in place. The voice kept calling me, but I couldn't believe it. It was Ellen's voice, coming from the other side of the door. What it couldn't be. I begged you, John, open the door. It's serious. She's not me. I swear, she's not me. Slowly, I turned my head to look at Ellen, standing in front of the couch. She was looking at me, the same fixated eyes and a terrible, wide grin across her face. The pounding continued. John, open the door, please. You have to trust me. I stayed still, not knowing what to do, and I don't remember what happened after that. I just woke up in my bedroom. The digital clock indicates it's 4:21 a.m. Ellen isn't by my side. I'm completely alone. I'm trembling uncontrollably, and I don't know what's going on. I don't remember what happened after I saw her terrible grin. I don't know if I opened the door. I tried to look for my phone, see if I could call the police, or at least someone that I know, but I left it downstairs. All I have is Ellen's laptop, and it's where I'm writing this right now to get advice, because I can't go downstairs. The corridor is dark, very dark, almost as if the shadows were leaning into the room, and I can hear a faint, scratching sound coming from below. What should I do? My feel broke into my house, knowing I was the only one home. Context: my husband and I have been married for about 2 years and have never had any issues with Phil at all. I am very much in love with my husband. We have been together a total of 5 years, 2 of them being married. His mother passed away from a freak accident when he was around 10, and his father has been a single father since. He's never even looked at another woman since she's been gone. Typically, we spend holidays at his father's with his 2 younger brothers. Everything has always been normal, besides his father never really speaks too much. That's the norm for him. His 2 younger brothers are extremely outgoing and always brag about how great their childhood was and never had an issue with their dad not remarrying. When I started coming around, I did notice his dad giving me the side eye, but brushed it off as none of the boys have really had women in their lives for a long time. This last Christmas, we spent a few days extra at his father's house because he had called and wanted to make sure he would be okay. We are all pretty healthy, so it didn't really bother us. About a month later, his father had finally started to open up to us, which was weird because nothing crazy had happened while he had COVID. He would call my phone once a day asking how myself and my husband are doing and if we needed anything from him. I always assured him we were okay and didn't need anything from him. I work from home, so I am home almost every day. My husband, however, works 2 weeks out of the month out of town. My Phil knows this and knows his son's schedule very well since it's always the same. One day, I'm home working, and my husband is away on his usual work schedule. I hear a slight banging noise from my back door in the kitchen. While I'm in my office on the other side of my house, I know it's not my husband because he would have called to let me know he's coming home early. I do have a cat, so I was really hoping my cat had knocked something over. I ignored it until about 5 minutes later I had that door bust open. I immediately grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom attached to my master bedroom and locked the door. I tried calling my husband to see if it was him. No answer. I tried again. No answer. I heard footsteps in my kitchen and drawers being opened. I knew it was not my husband now. I immediately dialed 911, but for some reason my signal had stopped working, and I couldn't get through. I usually have a gun in my nightstand drawer, but I did not want to risk moving out of the safety of my locked bathroom. I quietly looked for a weapon to fight off my home intruder, but all I could find was an eyelash curler and a metal nail file. I hear footsteps getting closer and closer to my bedroom. Then my doorknob is being shook hard. I fight the urge to scream out, but it sounded like whoever was out there was coming in no matter what. I got behind where the door would open and waited for the door to open so I could attack first. Then I heard my front door open and the shaking of the knob stopped. My heart sank. What if that was my husband that opened my front door coming home early, and I still had no signal? What if whoever broke into my house was armed and could hurt my husband? The footsteps started going toward my front door, and as soon as I felt clear, I ran to my room and got my gun. I quietly started walking to the front of my house only to hear my Phil screaming and fighting. Now I'm confused. I ran to the front of my house finger ready to pull the trigger, and I see my Phil hitting and kicking a man to the floor I have never seen before in my life. He tells me to call the police, and luckily I still have a landline in my kitchen, so I call the police, and they come to arrest the strange man. The man had admitted to watching me and decided he wanted to break into my house and rape me and kill me. He had tracked my husband's work schedule for months and seen no immediate family over at our house before, and figured how would be the perfect time to strike. I thank my Phil for saving my life, and that I don't know what I would do without him. After everyone left, I sat on my couch waiting for a repairman to come fix my door that the strange man had broken into, and then it dawns on me, why was my Phil coming to my house unannounced, knowing I was the only one home? And how did he get in without actually breaking my door down? I immediately ran to my keys and noticed my house key was gone. This sent chills down my spine. What were my Phil's real intentions? There's a part 2, so here it is. My Phil broke into my house, knowing I was the only one home. Part 2. After the repairman came to fix the broken door, I had also requested a lock change. However, that may take a few days with everyone being backed up due to call-in. I decided to stay with a friend until that was done. That way I was safe and sound. I could not get the thought out of my head. What were my FIL's intentions coming to my house unannounced? I tried to ignore it, but I'm so freaked out by the whole situation. I turned to my friend for advice. I guess it's important to mention, my Phil lives an hour away. He lives in the city while I live in a very small town surrounded by lots of old folks. I explained what happened to me to my best friend of 10 years. She came up with a lot of great excuses to make me feel better, but none of them really made sense as to why he was there. I still haven't got a hold of husband, which is also extremely weird. Typically, he would have been off work for about 2 hours by now. A few days pass and my locks get changed. I go back to my normal routine hoping to forget why Phil was at my house. I had talked to my husband since then but never brought up the man and his father breaking in. I'm searching for answers, but secretly I don't think I want to know the answer. After all, nothing bad came of him breaking in. Obviously, he saved my life. I decided to call him and thank him for what he had done for me. He said we should meet for coffee to discuss why he was at my house unannounced. This made me weaken than is as I am very bad with confrontation. Reluctantly, I agreed. He said it should be soon because it's important. We planned for the next day. We meet at a local coffee shop and sat down outside where it was nice and warm. Phil, listen, I think you're a great person, but I think you should divorce my son. Then, why do you think that? Your son and I are amazing for each other. We thrive off of each other's energy. Didn't we come here to talk about why you were at my house? Phil, yes, that's exactly why we are here. I want you to know, I care about you and my son deeply. But there's something you should know. Me. What is it that I should know? Please don't tell me some petty excuse about I'm taking your son away from you. We come around as much as we possibly can. You're always more than welcome to go stay with him on his work trips, which you never take part of. Phil, yes, I know, but that's actually what we need to talk about. The reason I came to your house the other day, unannounced, was because I don't want to upset you or freak you out. This weekend I had drove to where my son was supposed to be staying for his work trip, and he wasn't there. I was so confused because my son never lies to me, and when I tried to call him, he didn't answer. I remembered the tracking app he installed on my phone in case any of us ever got lost. So I used it, and where it led me to was disturbing to say the least. Okay, what are you talking about? You're giving me anxiety. Phil, I need you to stay calm. This is exactly why I came to your house unannounced. I knew it was going to happen. What was going to happen? Phil, I found my son's location in a small house with technology and computers everywhere, the most computer equipment I've ever seen in my entire life. But my son wasn't there. I couldn't confront him, I will admit. I did snoop, but I'm so glad I did. My son hires hitmen to kill women to sell their body parts on the dark web. You were his next victim. I had seen the conversation between him and the hitman. He gave the address, your name, and where your gun was. The backstory was if he had gotten caught. Was to say he had been watching you for months and tracking your husband's schedule. He was going to kill you. That is why I did what I did. Oh my god, I have no idea what to say. Have you spoken with him since? Have you went to the police? This is absolutely insane. I don't know if I even believe you. Phil, I have proof and you are not safe. You need to come with me to go into a protection program. It's for the best. No, I need to talk to my husband. Please, I won't say anything. Phil, you can't. At this point, he knows I've been there. It's only a matter of time before he comes for you. I want you to know, just as my Phil was about to say something else, a bullet flies directly into the side of his skull, blowing brains and skull chunks all over me and other nearby coffee drinkers. Everyone screams and starts to run. That's when I see him. My husband just killed his father. Husband tries to call out to me that it doesn't have to be this way. All I can do is run. Run. I can't think or speak. I just run. He's running after me, and it feels like I'm being chased by much more than just him. I see a dumpster and I dive in and cover myself with trash, hoping to God he didn't just see where I went. I can hear him calling my name. I don't budge. I am so fearful for my life right now I have no idea what to do. I've been writing this entire story from a dumpster. My friend has no idea where I am and I am too scared to call anyone. I can't believe my husband is a serial killer.